know that we had a time constraint at our June meeting because we had a lot of business to transact, and so we cut off the question and answer with Nikki early and extended it to the day to continue that discussion. The little bit of things, this is a workshop, so we will be conducting no formal business. We will not be making any decisions, and so we're really answering any questions. We are here to listen and learn about your concerns and their answers for you. But we have normal Board of Supervisors decorum. We want to keep your hands raised, or if there are too many people at once, we'd like no more than 3 people standing in line for the microphone. Save time for people to get up there, but not have the whole room trying to get up there. And so he and company will be over here, township will be there. So if somebody gets up to speak, another person will get in line, you all can figure out how to be fair to each other. What else? Two things. We did get all of the emails, text messages, petitions. We've heard from a lot of people, and we have reviewed all of them. As of, what was our cutoff, the 22nd, and a few that came in after that. I'd like to ask you that you try to not repeat something somebody's already said. If the only comment you have is a me too, I hate that. We got that already. So there will be, but if you have something new to add or a different perspective, we want to hear that. But let's not waste everybody's time going over the same things multiple times. So is there anything I forgot? Anything I forgot? Okay.
We discussed that we were going to have a hard out at 9 o'clock.
Oh, yes, I did forget. 2 things. We're going to stop at 9 o'clock. John will make closing remarks for the township a little before 9. If they're really, Dana and I are not in position to answer any questions. We don't have a formal submission. But if there's really something that John or our solicitor Mark feels needs to be answered, then we would ask them to step in and do that.
Right, and I think that's what we want everyone to understand, that we don't have a formal submitted plan to it yet. So all of these questions you have tonight are going to be for you.
Okay. Shall we talk and running? Please info, that's what I forgot when you come to the microphone, your name and your street address.
Excuse me, turn up the volume a little bit. We
Um,
can't hear anything.
I can't.
Turn it up. That's it.
Apparently it's already turned up. Feel free to come in and sit on the floor, sit on somebody's
Hopefully
lap.
these mics will be better too.
No, I'm going to let him introduce himself and get on with the show.
Okay. Can everybody hear me okay? My name is Mark McGonigal. I'm with McKee Group. I also was in the same spot 2 weeks back, and we had a lot of questions thrown our way that night regarding both the plans and what our options might be for the tenant property. We ended the meeting that night, and the township, it was a great idea. They got together and they said, hey, let's listen to, or put your questions together, try and get them to you guys, and see as best we can answer those. The first thing I want to say is that all the questions we did receive, and we received some correspondence from some certain neighbors and township people regarding zoning, traffic, environmental, wetlands, pick your pick. There's just a numerous of agencies that we deal with when we're involved in a project like this. The last meeting, we heard loud and clear. There were many issues, but a couple of the issues that from doing this for a a long time, a couple of the big issues that I came away with that night, besides a bunch of other things, was how important Chester Springs Road is, the history of Chester Springs Road, how it will not support this or won't support that. People walk along Chester Springs Road and so forth. So we, as a group, and there's many issues here that we need to talk about, trust me, I realize that. But we went back as a group and said, all right, listen, the first thing we have to really think about here is, you're right on in terms of Chester Springs Road. I've driven it now 40, 50 times, okay? So we went back and said, all right, let's try and figure this out. So we went back, and I'm gonna pop the screen up, the plan up there, but I remember last time we were here, people said they had a hard time reading what was being put up there. So Colin's gonna there's a hard copy of the plan that we printed out, and it's gonna be put on that easel right there, next to where the young lady is standing. So the hard copy is gonna be put up there if you wanna go up and take a look at it and so forth to make it easier. Because, listen, I'm older now, I'm having a hard time seeing that plan myself. So, but what we've done is, and this is just a little bit of the issues here, we realize that, but this is the big one, is we pretty much have shut down Chester Springs Road with just emergency access that we need, the gated emergency access. We have moved all the entrance for the project, for the active adult project, we'll say, which we kind of like probably a little bit better, coming in off of 401, where it actually sits behind the natural buffer and so forth. It would be a gated community winding down back into the project where, in reality, you really wouldn't be able to see it from 401. So we've made that adjustment to the plan to try and see, first of all, from a traffic standpoint, what it would do. And second of all, we heard loud and clear about Chester Springs Road. We then proceeded to say that one of the issues along Chester Springs Road is people seem to really enjoy that road as a walking, take their nice walks at night, whatever the case may be. There are some trails in West Kingston along with Upper Newfoundland, because you have the Ewing track, which is right next door in West Kingston. And you can see that on the map up there. There's 359 units at the Ewing track in West Kingston. So we then proceeded to put a walking trail along the Bennett property down Chester Springs Road. Because, listen, I've driven that road now, like I said, 40 or 50 times, and I did it tonight, and there were a couple of people walking that road. And you really have to be careful. You absolutely do, regarding them walking and you driving. So we're going, if we move forward on this, there will be a walking trail along Chester Springs Road, a public access walking trail, leading all the way back and trying to tie in to the existing trails that you can see, I believe, up there on the map. So there are two of the issues that we initially thought were big issues. I know everybody has a lot of questions tonight, like I said, and I hope we have the right people here to answer those questions, including myself. We have Matt Hammond regarding traffic. Allison Zarro is our counsel regarding the process of all the different agencies that we need to go through for anything like this, and even the Byroad plan. The different, whether it's DEP, PennDOT, take your pick, it's just the agencies are just phenomenal. So, and we have Lisa Thomas from Black & Thomas, who is part of the planning team. I'm going to just go through briefly some of the things that, on the questions that we received. And if you can just let us talk for a little bit before, and we will try and answer all your questions as best we can. But you have to realize that a lot of your questions we won't be able to answer in detail because we don't have all that information yet. This is very, very early on in the process on this project. So I don't want you to be alarmed if somebody answers the question. I can't really give you the right answer on that, or an answer because we don't have the data yet. We don't have the information. And a lot of that is going to, a lot of that's going to pertain to traffic, okay? And traffic is a big issue, and we realize that, okay? But by the time our traffic guys get done and the reports that we are required to file with the state, it's embarrassing. I didn't want to tell you what it's like to get a traffic report done and file with the state and get PennDOT to respond to it and so forth. So that's where we would really jump into this thing from the very beginning, is regarding traffic. And we as the team, we like to form a group with the public on any project we do, because we have to listen to the public. It's the right thing to do. So if we do move forward, whether it's the active adult plan or the by right plan, we're going to look for everyone's input. You guys get your committee together, you give us a bunch of questions, we're going to listen, and we will work with you as best we can. There will be times where we will be able to do what you're asking us to do, just because it just doesn't make sense. So, with that being said, traffic and roads was the first issue that the township sent over to us regarding the project. And I'm going to let Matt just go through that as briefly as he can regarding the questions. Like I said, some you will be able to answer, some you won't be able to answer. And I'll try and answer any question you have when it's time for the public to get up there and speak. But I just wanted to try and cover traffic and roads was a big issue. Another topic that the council gave us was environment, which is great. Water and sewer, and then miscellaneous. And then we also had a letter that was sent to the Board of Supervisors that we were nice enough to get certified regarding a group of neighbors and concerned citizens that hit on a lot of good points regarding Chester Springs Road, ingress and egress, and all questioning zoning, why not tier 4 instead of tier 3, and we will try and answer all those questions as best we can. So, with that being said, we're just going to talk here for a little bit, and then we're going to answer your questions. So,
Yes,
Absolutely, good evening. So as Mark had mentioned, a lot of the feedback that we received the last time we were here.
we need your name for that.
Oh, sure, Matthew Hammond, Hammond.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as I was mentioning, last time we were here, there were a number of comments related to traffic and the aspects of the development based on the plan that was presented at that time. As Mark had mentioned, that plan had shown a direct access to Chester Springs Road and no access to Route 401. Obviously, everyone in this room was not too thrilled to see the direct access for this development right off of Chester Springs Road. So as Mark had mentioned, we went back to the drawing board and kind of went through some iterations of the plans and kind of tried to look at how we can incorporate as many of the comments as we received. A lot of those relate to the questions that the public has provided, as well as some of the commentary that was also provided. And in terms of the questions,
Excuse me, please, please resist commenting during the presentations. Thank you.
in regards to the comments received, and I went through them, there were about 3 main points. And first and foremost, the main point was, why is access on Chester Springs Road and not on Route 401? Obviously, that question, or those questions have been addressed by virtue of the plans that you see. And again, as Mark had mentioned, you will see from this plan that there is an access point onto Chester Springs Road. You will notice as you're able to see that plan, get closer to that plan, you'll notice that that's actually included emergency access and will not allow vehicular access to and from Chester Springs Road directly from the development.
Can you speak directly to the microphone?
Sure. The second main theme that I saw is how's traffic going to be managed? How do you plan to address increases in traffic on Chester Springs Road or 401? Have you conducted any traffic studies? What I would say to that is we have not, as Mark had mentioned, we're not yet at the stage where we've conducted any traffic studies or prepared the necessary documents. This is more of a fact-finding mission, more of a collaboration with the public and the township to determine how we can put our best foot forward and put forth the best plan that meets everyone's needs to the extent possible. But as part of what would go into that traffic study, the township has ordinance requirement. So any development that generates, I'm sorry, 25 more units, that generates more than 250 vehicular trips over the course of the day is required to provide a traffic study. And that's in the Saldo ordinance section 315 B1 5 A through D. It lays out the parameters of the traffic study. But what it also talks about is the fact that those parameters are really much guided by PennDOT and PennDOT's requirements for traffic studies. And being that our main access to development is being proposed off of the state roadway, not only will we need to seek township approval through the land development process for the development, but we'll also need to seek PennDOT approval. And that's a separate process that we go through. We hope, for the most part, that it's a parallel process, but it doesn't always end up being that way. We'll need to seek approval to gain what's called a highway occupancy permit, or an HOP. And that allows us direct access to the state roadway and to do whatever we need to do to meet the PennDOT criteria within that existing state roadway. So that those criteria, how traffic studies prepared, are within what's called publication 282 of PennDOT. There's another comment. The other main theme talked about trails and pedestrian traffic. As I mentioned, or I'm sorry, as Mark had mentioned, we have proposed to provide a public trail along Chester Springs Road to take the people that walk on Chester Springs Road off the road, allow them the opportunity to do so without having to deal with traffic or vehicles traveling up and down the road in that area. We've also looked at how we could potentially take that trail and connect it into the trails that have been constructed or previously proposed or are proposed. A lot of those exist further towards the Union Track, take all the way down to Eagle Farm Road. I'm sorry. So those are things that, again, we'll continue to work with the public and the township on. We did try to take our first crack at providing pedestrian trail network that's for the public along Chester Springs Road. But those were the three main points that I saw within those questions. Again, a lot of them had to do with the access and how we're going to deal with traffic. But that's something that we will get to if we're fortunate enough to move forward. That is something that we'll get to. Will be a public document that will be submitted to the township. Township consultants review it, and not will review it. So there'll be multiple entities that will end up reviewing that study, that analysis, and will. So again, as we go through the process, we'll further refine that as well, because ultimately we need to obtain not only land development approval, but approval from the state for access to the 401.
Me again. We're going to try and get through these issues as quickly as possible because the majority of the time is for you guys to ask these questions. The second issue that they brought up in the questionnaire was the environment. And I'll go through this as quickly as I can. It talks about how will this increase litter be managed. In all developments, you have a homeowner association in terms of which takes care of the property, whether it's winterizing, cutting lawns, taking care of the open space, plowing during the winter time, and so forth. So these properties, whether it's the by right plan or the active adult plan, they both will be managed by homeowner association. Will your development utilize clean energy, renewable energy? Yes. The key is a certified, and we'll provide all the documentation for that. Will there be any open space left in the 185-acre parcel? Yes, there will. 68% of the active adult plan is open space, and 47.5% is open space on the by right plan. Will you have existing problems with runoff and so forth? That leads back to what I said about 10 minutes ago regarding the engineers getting involved here in terms of the project. And we will not be able to get any of our approvals from any agency without our engineers What are your proposals for preserving wildlife? Well, the first thing you do on a piece of property is you run a PINDY report, and that's already been done. And the PINDY report identifies any endangered species, any endangered plants, what your buffers might be for that. We have to address all that. We've addressed quite a bit of that regarding, so there's been a PINDY report produced for the Bennett property, and we have been on the Bennett property probably 12 to 13 times, doing what we have to do to identify and figure out what might be an issue and what might not be an issue. Have you proposed to proposed to manage the burden of development and whatever in our environment? Once again, that leads back to all the different agencies, including the supervisors who are sitting up here right now, the group that was put together by the township to assist us in going through this process. So that's something that we deal with on a daily basis. Has a wetland study been completed and provided? A preliminary wetland study has been done. Has it been provided to the township? No, it has not. So regarding the environment, I think I just went through the bullet points that we were given. This next bullet point is water and sewer. Will development have public water and sewer or on-site facilities? The by right plan, as we all know, in the development world, everything is driven by soil. We've done preliminary soil maps on this property and testing of the soil. So the two developments that you see, one being the active adult, one being the by right, it's driven by the soil. The by right plan will be public water, but it'll be on lot septic. The active adult plan will be public water and sewer. Then we get into the miscellaneous section, and that really talks about why 55 plus for this property. And so I guess the best way I can answer that is that we, for the T group, we're developers, and our core business and what we feel we're really good at is the 55 plus market. Not that we're not good at most things, but this is something that we feel good about. It says, if we do a complete needs assessment for 55 plus development in this area, we generally look at the entire Chester County, Bucks County, Montgomery County, Delaware County, Maryland. They're the states that we currently build, and we've done numerous active adult communities in each of those states. One of our active adult communities that is going on right now is the preserve at Marsh Creek, which is not too far away. A couple other questions on here related to townships and why would townships want this product in their township? Well, all I can say is a couple jobs that I'm familiar with right now, and they're not in the townships, but they're being well received by the townships. It's a job in the Regency of Waterside, which is the Limestone Golf Course in Horsham Township. Limestone Golf Course in Horsham Township, from a by right plan, could do, I think it was 110 single-family homes. They're currently building 475 active adult units on there. The Jerakian Estate, which is in West Goshen Township, which is also known as Greystone, has a large portion of not only market rate, but active adult. I think some of the municipalities, and let me back up a second here, they look at, from a fiscal standpoint, and fiscal meaning the financial benefits it could be potentially to the township. And we have run fiscal reports on this property, and the gentleman, and I'm sorry to say this, but this is a busy time of year for people to take vacations. The gentleman, Eric Kitzel, who did our fiscal and our study, is not here tonight. I will try and answer as best I can any questions regarding fiscal. I think in the slide presentation we did when we were first here, we gave a very brief summary chart. There's all backup those numbers on the chart, and some young woman asked me that question, and I'm embarrassed to say we did not answer that question at the last meeting. But anything fiscally, we will be able to supply you with the information of this is what we think using West Vincent Township numbers and historical numbers of what the benefit would be for the active adult plan and what the benefit would be for the market rate plan. I'm going to try and address the letter that we received too, which is a well-written letter, and it really gets down into the meat of some of the zoning and why this and why that. A lot of it had to do with traffic and the ingress and egress to Chester Springs Road. Then it also talks about the size of the proposed development. And I think, and I'm not, you have to understand what it takes to put together and pull off a development in terms of whether it's 55 plus or whether it's a market rate plan. And one of the questions was the density on our property regarding the active adult plan. That density that we have on the board over there is for a mixed product of single families and carriage homes. It's a density that we feel with 68% open space, it's a density that will allow us to take care of, or if there are some issues in the township because of this development that need to be addressed, we can do that. So I just want to be clear about that. They talk about historic preservation, which is a great topic. And West Vincent has historic maps. We will abide by all the rules and regs in terms of what historic means. So I want to be clear on that. It talks about the Lenape tribal nation encampment. We deal with this on a daily basis on all our projects. More in Delaware than in Pennsylvania, but if it requires some sort of historical information that we have to put together, whether it requires some sort of archaeological dig or whatever the case may be, we've done that in the past on many of our jobs. But one of the things I think I want to ask Allison to come up here for, just briefly, just explain the whole process of what it takes to get one of these communities from. If people think that the key would start on this job today and we're moving dirt in 24 months, that will never happen. It's a drawn-out process because of all of the entitlements, all the different agencies you have to deal with. And the last thing before I get Allison up here is I want to be clear that this project is not a CCRC. This is a 55 plus community where the majority of the people work, they're active, they're spending money in the township, their grandkids are coming there, they can spend a few nights with them, but they can't live there. There's a lot of different rules and regs that go along with this project. But if the township thinks that these type of projects bring a burden on their services, it's completely the opposite. The CCRCs is your independent assisted subacute memory care projects that are needed in everybody's township, but the burden on the township from that type of use is night and day to what a 55 plus community is. So,
I just want to step in. That is a continuing care retirement community. That's what the CCRC stands for. So you buy into your independent living, you can migrate to assisted living and more substantial care. And he's saying he's going to build an active adult community.
so I'm going to let Allison just briefly explain what it takes to get one of these up and running.
Good evening, everybody. Just to touch on that point before we go into the entitlements process itself, and I'm a little shorter, so I will direct the microphone to you. To further clarify, an over 55 plus community, it is regulated by the Fair Housing Act, and it does have specific restrictions on what you need to meet, and that would be regulated by the HOA here if this project were approved. So again, this is market rate for sale housing, but there are certain requirements, including that children under the age of 19 cannot live in the community as permanent residents. So Mark wanted me to touch on the process. So regardless of which plan or which option or what he would do here, there's a long process that involves the public and the supervisors in order to get a development approved. If the age-restricted project were to go forward, that would actually need some zoning changes. I think everybody's aware that that's not currently a use that's specifically contemplated in the West Vincent ordinance. So that would first require review by not only the supervisors, but your planning commission, and a public hearing in front of the supervisors for the zoning changes to be enacted. If that were, and regardless of whether that occurs or not, either plan would require land development approval. Land development approval is a two-step process. It's governed by the Pennsylvania Municipality Planning Code, and it requires review by your planning commission, all of your township consultants, including engineer, traffic engineer, etc. And the board of supervisors also reviews and approves these plans, and these discussions take place at public meetings. But what Mark was alluding to is there's also a whole slate of third-party agencies that would need to review and approve and issue permits related to the project. For instance, stormwater management and erosion and sedimentation control are governed by the Chester County Conservation District and the Department of Environmental Protection at the state level. So detailed stormwater plans would be reviewed not only by the township engineer and the planning commissioner and the supervisors, but they would also be reviewed, and eventually permits would need to be issued by DEP. We have touched on the fact that there are wetlands on the site. At this point, it's not as though there's anything specific related to that, but all of those things are reviewed by third-party agencies. Mark touched on what's called a PIND, which stands for Pennsylvania Natural Diversity Inventory, and that will identify potential protected species on the property. As part of any DEP approvals, the developer has to get clearance, depending on what's on the property. It may require review by additional third-party agencies. And then finally, something that we know that would be required here under any development scenario, assuming access to 401, as Matt touched on, it would require a highway occupancy permit, and here we touched on that process. But those are just some of the third-party agencies. Most of that occurs concurrently with the township review, but again, it's a long process. And the last thing actually I should mention is sewer. So if the age-restricted project were to go forward, that would be contemplated to be connected to public sewer. Again, the DEP would review that, and they would approve something. They would have to approve something during the process called a planning module, which sets forth the actual planning for sewer as it relates to this particular project. And the township again reviews components of that at public meetings. So with that, Mark, if there's anything else, I think I should touch on.
I'm just checking on those two. With that being said, I've said what I think I have to say. And the next step, if you want to, whatever the council wants to do.
Ready for some
Yeah, sure.
Okay, this mic, just don't knock it down, try to get it to me. The garbage can is being moved out of the way. So, I would appreciate questions and constructive comments. Thank you. Steph, I think you got here first. I'm not going to go. Oh, sure. Anybody else who wants to sit on the floor, there's plenty of room in the aisle.
My name is Wayne Ross. I reside at 550 St. Matthews Road, which is about 3 houses in from Chester Springs Road. I had I do a lot of forensic work. I had an accident reconstructionist look over the plan, look over the sites, and I'd like to read his letter Essentially, you can comment on it or whatever you want, or the commissioners. I sent it earlier today. I received it today. A signed copy, sent it to the commissioners. My business has been hired by parties interested in the proposed 250-unit housing development in the area of Chester Springs Road, South Chester Springs Road, Conestoga Road. After investigation and site visits were completed, we reached the following conclusions. To date, no traffic and engineering study nor traffic impact study has been conducted prior to the approval of this project. Westminster Township Right to Know inquiry indicates that no traffic counts have been conducted on the rural residential roads directly impacted by this proposed project. During the investigation period, it was noted that Chester Springs Road and South Chester Springs Road is heavily utilized by local residents for athletic leisure activities such as walking, jogging, bicycling, and horses. There were a lot of horses, and that was neglected. I've traveled up and down Chester Springs Road probably thousands and thousands of times, 40 and 50 times. And there are a lot of horses that go there. There's a lot of traffic, and there's been increased traffic since Toll Brothers has come in. There's been a lot more traffic going up and down those roads. Now, what he points out here is that a completed project of 250 homes adds a significant increase in motorized vehicle traffic traveling on the roadways of Chester Springs Road, South Chester Springs Road, St. Matthews Road, Conestoga Road, Byers Road, Eagle Farms Road. So it's not just one road. It's not just trails around the road. It's all the whole area is going to have increased traffic. Most of these impacted roadways are engineered to handle the increase in traffic volumes with needed widening, traffic control devices, and pedestrian crosswalks. It would be derelict to approve a project that would increase the risk of injury and property damage to this area, primarily occupied by residential and agricultural lands populated in space at an ideal limit with no further increase in its census. To adapt this community to the proposed project, traffic conditions would have to be radically adjusted for growth. This improvement would include roadway widening, most likely by eminent domain, and additional engineering for proper traffic control and direction. To the opinion of this business specializing in forensic collision investigation, traffic, and engineering studies, this project will increase collision risk based upon the following. Traffic volume increases, additional ingress and egress, additional pedestrians, increased census of drivers over 55 years of age, increased emergency calls for service. Based upon this study, I recommend the liability of the township be preserved by rejecting this project up for approval. Yeah, yours.
Yes, that's the best.
Sure. Without seeing the actual report, I appreciate you reading that. I would be a little, I guess, taken aback by why a forensic engineer would be, a collision engineer would be offering an opinion on a traffic study, but he was just here nor there. So I would say is I do agree with him on the fact that I agree that if you go to approve this type of development without the proper studies and without the proper documentation and analysis being conducted. As I mentioned earlier when I was discussing the question, discussing the answers to questions, if we're able to move forward, there will be documents provided, there will be traffic studies, there will be traffic counts, there will be analysis done, traffic will be distributed not only on Chester Springs Road, on 401 and the surrounding roadway network. Analysis will be conducted. There are criteria that we must meet. We must mitigate by coming to that public. We must mitigate the impact of our development. And sometimes that requires roadway improvements. Being that we're providing the main access on the 401, I would say that the majority of the improvements that we provide for this development would be on 401. But that's not to say that there wouldn't be other improvements. And when I talk about vehicular traffic, or traffic itself, I'm talking about pedestrians, I'm talking about vehicles. I know you mentioned horses, there's plenty of other type of users of this road rather than just vehicles, and all of that will be taken into account. And again, there are criteria, there are standards that we must meet, as I mentioned, the town has ordinance requirements, and PennDOT has requirements. Goes through a long, lengthy process. We will provide that information, and we look at that, we would meet those criteria. Because if we don't meet those criteria, then we're not getting a high occupancy permit from PennDOT, or we're not getting land development approval from the township. And all of those entities, PennDOT and the township, will review those documents, decide whether or not they agree or disagree. If they disagree, we have to determine how to appease them, or how to meet those standards. I would say, though, the one comment that struck me, I remember, from that letter is that certain improvements would be necessary and could be done via eminent domain. And I would say that we do not, as a private entity, have eminent domain power. The only way that property can be taken for the public good would either be a township act or by the state. We do not have the opportunity to take property from any private property owner. If we need it right away, or if we need property to effectuate an improvement, we could approach that property owner and we could ask for that property and compensate that individual for that property, but we don't have the ability to take property that's not properly under our control. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Matt?
Matthew Shelkoff, my wife and I are at 2619 Chester Springs Road, and we also have 2647 Chester Springs Road. So first, I just want to say thank you to everybody for coming here tonight. I really appreciate it. And also thank you to the McKee group. I think that anybody that was here at the June meeting sees a change in the tone a little bit. I appreciate the changes that they're offering, and so far the only change that I see that I would actually enjoy is a walking trail. So with that being said, I think that if anybody was here at the June meeting, there was two proposals that were made. One was the by right plan, and for those who don't know what a by right plan is, it was essentially saying we can build this and we don't need to amend the zoning ordinance at all. That was 50 homes. And then the second proposal was a 55 and over community, similar to what you see here. And that was, we need to amend the zoning ordinance to make that happen. So in terms of the 55 and over community, and again, I think the tone may have softened a little bit, but there was two things that I really kind of heard echoed for why you should want a 55 and over community. Number one was, look at all the money you're going to get from it. Number two was, no kids. It sounds like a perfect offer to like Ebenezer Scrooge. So we have a little bit more of an opportunity this evening to hear some other things from McKee, and I appreciate that. But I think it's really important to hear some of the things that McKee is not telling us. And maybe they'll have an opportunity to address some of that. So the first one, if anybody's on social media, by now you're probably aware of what's been put out there about West Whiteland. Mark talked about, is there a need for a 55 and over community around here? Well, right down the road by the Church Farm School, McKee got approved for a 55 and over community. We haven't heard mention of that. I'm just going to give you a little bit of background on it because I think it's interesting. So in September of 2020, McKee went before the Planning Commission at West Whiteland, and they presented two options for development. One was a life care plan, one was a 55 and over community. The 55 and over community is called Valley Creek and has 344 units. The life care was permitted under the zoning. And can anyone guess? Active 55 and over was not permitted under the zoning. So in October of 2021, I apologize, we back up here. In October of 2021, there was a memorandum that's out there that will be posted later. And in it, the Director of Planning and Zoning for West Whiteland has this quote. McKee made it clear that the active adult project was their preference, and their purpose for the meeting with the commission was to determine if you, the planning commission, would support such an amendment to the zoning ordinance. In April of 2022, West Whiteland, after putting notice out there, amended or made a motion to amend the zoning ordinance. In May of 2022, just 2 months ago, West Whiteland adopted that amendment, and now McKee can build their 55 and over community in West Whiteland. But you heard tonight some statements from Mark about why is a 55 and over community beneficial. I think one of the things we have to look at is, and it made me scratch my head, why are they pushing so hard for a 55 and over community in Chester Springs? Well, yes. Okay, terrific. I can do that. So, maintain my eye contact. So, but under the by right plan, there are 50 homes that they would propose at $800,000 each. That equals $40 million in gross revenue. Under the 55 and over community, it's 159 units at $630,000 and 126 units at $560,000 for a total of $170 million in gross. So McKee presented us with two options, but there's really only one option, and that's a 55 and over community. Also, I just have one question. Is Matthew Brown here from Upper Yukon? Okay. So also McKee is also working with Upper Yukon, and you heard that in the Preserve at Marsh Creek. When I just did a random search of Upper Yukon and McKee, and just wanted to see if there was any other activity going on there. In the June 2022 minutes, it's interesting because Mr. Brown noted that a developer looking to partner with Upper Yukon Authority for land procurement in West Vincent Township presented their proposal to West Vincent Township at their June Board of Supervisors meeting. Mr. Brown noted he was in attendance and there appeared to be strong pushback from residents against the proposal. He said he would continue to monitor the progress of the project. If he was here, he could report back that there's stronger pushback. Attached to those minutes was an engineering consultant report from a group in Westchester. In that, it talked about the preserve. And in August 2014, McKee met with Upper Yukon Township to first discuss the adult active community that's there now. It's pretty interesting because of the 375 housing units, they produce 62,675 gallons per day of sanitary flow or waste. The on-site sewage disposal capacity was noted to be 42,643 gallons per day, which meant that they took about 20,000 gallons off-site per day. Why does that matter? Well, again, Mr. Brown is mentioned in the June 2021 minutes. And he provided a monthly update on land that was available for disposal. And he spoke about the Ewing tract and a land parcel in West Vincent Township that was adjacent to the Ewing development that had been identified after an analysis has been done as having suitable soils that could yield up to 150 gallons per day capacity. Mr. Brown shared that talks were ongoing with the developer who was looking to work with the landowner for a combined development/disposal area. Now, I became a lawyer because I'm not good at math. But if the Bennett parcel can handle 150,000 gallons per day of waste, and the proposed active 55 community would probably be around 50,000 gallons per day of waste, it seems like we have a lot of room to take on waste from other people, other McKee properties, and other townships. But I understand you said that the active 55 and over would be public sewer, so we hope. I just want to end on this. I appreciate what you come in here. I appreciate your tone. But I think you're going to find that you picked the wrong parcel in the wrong township with the wrong community. So, thank you.
I should have brought my A timer. The thing I forgot to mention was, please respect the time of everybody in the room and everybody who's waiting to make a comment, and keep your comments shorter. So thanks, Matt, for all the details, but,
Sorry for the time.
oh, yeah, you just can't get other people's time, so.
I'll make this very short, actually. The gentleman was referring to a project of ours on the ongoing, in West Whiteland Township. The couple of things that I think we forgot to mention was that that property was zoned for life care, at CCRC. The property was also zoned for over $1.2 million lots, which the township just vehemently did not want. We made our presentation to the West Whiteland, we made our presentation to the West Whiteland public, and we had unanimous decision in terms of the use of what we wanted to do there because of the traffic impact, the lack of traffic impact for our adult community, the fiscal to the township, instead of a life care facility, which would be a non-profit organization, and the office facility with traffic that is generated just in the road. So, and with that being said, the option 2 plan, or the option 1, we're calling the by right plan. Tom Bennett, who was the property owner, that's a very doable plan that we have drawn up now. And where our property and where the homes are located, as I said half hour ago, a lot of it is soil driven. So the 50 or so lots, and that number could increase because we are very early on in terms of testing the property. But that's a project that somebody would have called 3 years ago. Say, hey, you're just using that as a bluff to what you will or won't do. I would have probably said, you're right, I'm not a good poker player. But as we all know, the world has changed in the last 2.5 years of what we've gone through with COVID and so forth. So this project, everybody is now looking for the bigger lot, the bigger house, more open space. So this project will be well received in the public. So I just want to be clear on that.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephanie Lindquist. I own 3 Kings Farm on Veronica Drive. And thank you to the board for the opportunity for this workshop. Thank you to McKee for coming today. I am the primary author of the letter that was referred to earlier this evening, and if anyone wants a copy of that letter, I'm more than happy to send it to you so you can find me on Facebook. I want to thank Matt for the points that he made, and I want to just make a few additional points, both for the benefit of the audience, but also, of course, for the board and McKee. The first is that it's important for all of us to be aware that the Bennett parcel is the R3 zoning district. And in the R3 zoning district, there are 4 different tiers of development that are available to a developer. Both of the options that were presented to us, option 1 falls under tier 3, option 2, falls under tier 4. And the tier 3 option, option 1, is the one that the gentleman just referred to, that will put 50 houses on this 190-acre lot. And I want to just say one word about that first, and that is that I think we need to be aware that the plan that was presented to us in June of that 50 housing unit plan is not what can be done of right. There are still zoning guidelines, zoning restrictions, historical, environmental, et cetera, that must be met. That particular option allowed for 2 egresses on Chester Springs Road, and we've heard this evening that Chester Springs Road is not a good option for ingress and egress. So that particular plan, I just want everyone to be aware that that is not a done deal. Okay? So I think that's a concern, because I think the implication is that if we disapprove, or if the board disapproves, the tier 4 plan with the 55 plus community, that we are going to be stuck with option 1. And I do not think that's true. As for the tier 4 plan, the 55 plus, I think we all need to be aware that the zoning only allows about 65 homes under tier 4. That is 200 fewer homes that's being proposed on the development. Of that, of the units that are allowed on there, only 33% may be attached. And as of right now, the proposal for the 55 plus community actually has more than 1/3 of the units being attached. It's also, I think, important for, and I know the board is aware of this, and McKee should be as well, there are about 6,500 or 6,800 people in the township. And if this plan goes forward with 285 units and there are 2 people in each, we're talking about increasing the population of the township by almost 10% on a single lot. Think about that. A couple other things I want to say. The modus operandi for McKee, as Matt has already pointed out, is to obtain either a zoning variance or, most of the time, as we understand it, an amendment to the zoning code. Zoning variances are extremely, as the solicitor knows, extremely difficult to obtain. You have to basically demonstrate that in the current state of affairs under the zoning ordinance, the property is worthless, essentially. So a zoning variance is going to be very difficult to obtain, so the option is going to be an amendment. And the amendment would allow this to go forward, and that's what's happened in other townships. And that's something that we do not, that is not as of right, and that is not required under our zoning ordinance. Finally, see if there's anything else I want to say. I think the most important thing for us is to continue to remain involved. I thank the board again. I think I made the points that I wanted to make, and I think Matt has made the other points that were part of our sort of dual presentation. But I thank you very, very much, and thank you to the board, and thank you to McKee.
And thank you very much. Thank you for the restraint in your comments. Mary.
Hi everyone, I'm Mary Tremblay, I live at 1377 Ryan Lane. I'm not the daughter of our historian. She's not here tonight, but I know who the team is, so I know they're working really hard on that. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things, and actually I think what Stephanie just talked about, the 10%, even if they built 50 homes, with families of 4 to 5 people in them, we're also still going to have a 10% increase. And the last time I checked my taxes, I've only donated to the Euclid Volunteer Ambulance Corps and the West Vincent Township Fire Department. Where is the fire and rescue going to come from when we have this much development increase in the township? And I will say, I have a certain level of respect for developers. I'm a landscape architect, but I'm also incredibly disappointed a lot of times in what developers propose, because the lack of creativity is not there. It's always about, we can do it because we can. And what was mentioned about, oh, you'd be surprised what we could do about stormwater now. It's because we used to do everything because we could. We could do it. So now we have to have enforcements because developers didn't do something they should do. They did what they could do, right? And so if they're just proposing what's allowed, even under the single family home option, to me, that is not respectful of our township. Where is the saying, we're gonna come in, we're gonna add reforestation, we're gonna compensate for things, we're gonna look at fire departments, those sorts of things. It's just about the profits and the simplest development that they can make. And while I appreciate that we have an increase in population and an increased need for housing, I was born when my father was 44. I was 11 when my father was 55, right? So there are a lot of people that have children in an older age. And having this many units of adults over 55 that can't have their kids with them is kind of shocking to me. I realize it's a thing, you know, it happens, but that's also a lot of units of people that, and I think the forensic analysis was a brilliant point out, as we get older, we suck at driving. So, and also one of the things when we do we suck at driving is we start taking the back roads. And I live on a back road, and when there's a traffic accident on the main road, you would not believe what it's like on that back road. And also when there's a tree down, you know, taking the back road, we can't really take on 10% of an increase with one development, whether it's the 60 homes or whatever. So I would encourage the developer to say, maybe it's not just about what we can do, but maybe what we should do, which is respect the community and what it's like, and factor that into our design and our development, and come back to us with something that shows that level of respect for the land.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Isaac Reiner. I live with my wife and her father on St. Matthews Road. I've been here about 9 years. Her and her family have been here about 25 years. In the short time I've been here, I've noticed an increase in traffic due to development and things like that. Two examples are the stop sign now at St. Matthews Road and Chester Springs Road, which they're inconvenient for us, but they're really inconvenient for commuters who go through the area. And what I can see with this plan is where the exit comes out is right around the crest of the hill there on 401. And I think what the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation would say, let's put another stop sign in there. And what's going to happen is that's going to be one more stop sign that everyone ignores and just rolls through. So.
Yes.
And what else you'd like to come up to the microphone? Sure. From your traffic engineer. No. Did y'all really?
I actually have one other thing.
Yeah, you can come.
I'm sorry, I forgot to say something, I realized after the fact. One of the major points I think that the developer makes, understandably, is that this will be beneficial financially to the township. I just want everyone to know, and I think it's important, first of all, I have through an open records request, I have the report involving the financial analysis, and I'm happy to share that with you. And secondly, West Vincent, perhaps unlike, I don't know about West Whiteland and the other township, Upper Euclid, I think it may surprise the folks in the room to know that our median income here in West Vincent is $191,000 per family. It's a very, very wealthy township. We are not stretched for cash at the township level. In fact, we're operating in the black. And so the dangling of the additional resources for the township, I understand it, I truly do, but it really is not meaningful to us.
Thank you. So, are there really no more comments? Cindy's sitting on the floor. You're okay, huh? Anyone else over the folks?
Yes, my name is Andwin, A-N-D-U-I-N, Andela, A-N-D-E-R-L-E. We're at 916 Dewey's Lane. And my husband and I, we moved here with our kids just about a year ago this month. And either plan, whether it's going to be with the by right plan or this new plan, this is like right across the street from our house. Every day I sit outside and we have cars speeding by. We hear tires screeching. We have animals. We have deer. There's a lot of deer that try to cross through that area. And driving at night, sometimes it's not really safe, especially when a lot of deer are migrating. We lived in West Whiteland a few years ago. We moved there in 2014. And we had moved to New Jersey for 2 years before we ended up in Chester Springs. And I don't even recognize West Whiteland. And going through that area, you drive through and you're like, wow, how did this get here? How did that get there? And it's like, great, you have all this shopping and you have, all these cool shops. That's where I go when I need to get something. I'm okay not having shops in Chester Springs. We moved to Chester Springs because of what it is. And when I see this, and we were talking about how we didn't have the traffic survey, all you have to do is a couple mornings try to do a morning commute, go down Conestoga, and that's enough of a traffic survey for me, because why am I 2 blocks down the road on a country road waiting to get through 113? Another comment just, about the roads. Who's going to absorb the cost? If we have to do a lot of infrastructure and changes to the roads, to Byers, to Conestoga, to, Chester Springs and these areas, the community is going to bear the cost of that. And you see right now, after the last winter that we had, it took a long time just to get the potholes in the areas fixed coming up into this area. So we're gonna have more traffic, and it's really not going to do a lot for us. Also, when I drive through this area, every one of your homes is individual. The way it's landscaped, the way you peer into it, and it's amazing. That is something that I think is really special about this community and this area. And when people come to visit us, it's what makes it really remarkable. This, I don't get this. I don't get an eyesore of like a development just kind of flat in the middle of, oh, I'm driving through this middle of whatever, and then you end up with, well, what's this? And I think that I apologize, I forget the woman's name, the daughter of the historian.
Mary.
When she had mentioned the lack of creativity, and I think you can see that people are very invested in this community and are very passionate about, you know, what we have here. And this does nothing for us. This is not anything that we're going to tell our friends, hey, come move into this development across the street from my house. My house. No. So, you know, that is something that we are opposed to, but as far as the costs and how that would be addressed, I think that that's something important to consider.
Provide services to the development, would provide improvements to the roadway, repair certain things as it relates to the development, but the sole cost of the development. So that's 100% borne by the developer. None of the township does not spend one dime in terms of the infrastructure costs or whatever is necessary to upgrade the infrastructure to accept the development or to accept additional traffic outside of the development. So it's 100% borne by the developer.
Okay, thank you. Julie, Marcy, are you in line?
I'm in line.
You're not in line. Julie's in line.
I see it too.
Okay, let's get the argument over.
I wasn't
When you
gonna-
start talking.
Do I have to say my name?
Yes, and your address.
Oh, no. I live in the house.
There's an arrow pointing at her house. The one down at the bottom.
Yeah. So
My
I live
name
there.
is Marcy,
My name is Marcy.
looking church. I'm coaching you.
2000 Conestoga Road. And I just have a question. What do you need my property for? Like, what is it for?
Where's your property?
It's,
Julie, point out that farmstead. Yeah, that's it.
so what is it? Why do you need it?
That, your property is that's on the Bennett property, right?
It's
I
yours,
leased it.
and
I've been there for like 10 years. And I want to buy it.
You have to talk to Tom Bennett about that.
Last time you said if you want to buy any of it, it's up to you.
On the contract of Tom Bennett. Right now, that's a conservation easement, meaning that's going to be given to the township and left alone under that plan, but under the other plan, depending on what we find out from the historical standpoint, those ones are not. But under the active adult plan, it's a conservation easement to the township where everything's good.
So the township would make decisions on what happens to the home and the barn? I rest my case.
thank you, Julie.
Good evening, Julie Foster, 1682 Hilltop Road. On the topic of the historic building, it's interesting the two plans seem to present a stark contrast. One seems to be more desirable than the other, but echoing what the woman who mentioned the landscape architect said, where's plans, 3, 4, 5? Like, where's the creativity that maybe could be acceptable to the community? Because so far it seems like each one of the proposals does need some type of zoning, use, variance, or other concession by the township, and I haven't heard anyone in favor of any of those arguments. So that's my primary question is, are there other opportunities to come up with something that is workable for the community? Second, I wanted to quickly follow up on this more question for the supervisors on a question I raised last session regarding the zoning hearing scheduled for tomorrow. Are we having an attorney representing the
Julie,
township on
this
that?
is a workshop only, we're conducting no business. So we're only taking questions in regards to the McKee property. Please call the office and then we'll get the answer.
Well, this is a question for this board of supervisors.
No, but this is a workshop where we are here to, you missed my introduction, right? We're here to listen and learn, and we're conducting no official business other than hearing from our neighbors.
Okay, so that's a no, there won't be township representation?
I will not answer that question tonight.
Well, it's also really great to see so many folks coming out. I know folks came to the planning commission meeting last week. Come to the zoning hearing board meeting tomorrow. This is where these decisions get made. If there's a waiver request, if there's a
Julie,
zoning.
your time is up.
If there's a change request, everyone resident can be heard, you can give testimony, you can have standing to participate as the members of the community and what's happening in our township.
Julie.
It's tomorrow evening, there's one at 7 and there's another hearing at 8 p.m. Thank you.
Before you start, there are two simple parcel issues that are really not germane to people much more than the 500-foot limit, which is they all have to be notified about a zoning, a change, a requested zoning change. It is on our township website, information is there. And Julie missed my opening when I said how wonderful it was to have you all here. So, anyway, please give your name and address.
Hi, I'm Sarah Reyer. You heard from my husband, 19 Red Rock Lane. I've lived here for 25 years. Back in April, I had approached Sarah about a noise ordinance because this township has changed so much by the increase in multitudes of developments. I am curious to know, what are you going to do about the noise? Because the township to this day on August 1st still has not gotten back to me about this.
If there's a noise ordinance in the township, we would have to address that, but, listen, we're more than welcome to sit down. I think Julie was up previously one back to sit down. If you have ideas regarding a plan and what you'd like to see, but it has to be something that makes sense to your group or a committee that you might put together, but it also has to make sense to the McKee group, and also to, top end also. So, but we'd be more than happy to sit down. We have copies of our plans, both hard copies and both by right and what we're proposing here. So, if some group wants to get together and sit down and talk about all this, I'm all ears. I'm more than happy to.
Thank you, Mark. One more? Okay, and then we're going to let John talk.
Sounds good.
Okay, good.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kim Kranius. We're at 1355 St. Matthews, which is currently a giant empty field that we purchased 3 years ago as part of the Bryn Co-ed. I'm a farm girl. I come from the country, and it's taken me 47 years to find a location that I can build a home for my family that respects the integrity of the rural lifestyle and will provide a peaceful future for our family. I'm very curious, and this question is for the McKee group, in a community that fought tooth and nail to push toll brothers out, leverage natural lands to preserve 1,500 acres in West Vincent, so that instead of 900 homes being put up, it was 38 lots subdivided, and only 38 homes that can go up across 1,500 acres. What about that culture signals to McKee that this is the area to bring in a developer and put up that? It just seems to me like you're not in tune with what this community is about. And I'm curious as to whether or not what matters to us matters to you. Because from what I've heard throughout this evening, I really don't get that sense from you. I see this being developed and y'all walking away. And I see what I purchased and invested in 3 years ago changing like that, and I haven't been put a shovel in the ground. So I just really want to understand how you align to the culture of this community.
That's a great question. Where is your home in connection with the plan?
So we're on 1355 St. Matthews. So if you go up St. Matthews, cross over 401, we're down on the left quite a ways. Right now it is a 11-acre parcel that I hope never gets affected by anything any builder is proposing. But it's right now we haven't started building yet. COVID permits, we're very familiar with the requirements to build, and we respect them.
And so you referenced Spring Co-Ed. You're talking about the featured property on that open space?
That's right.
Right, okay. Colin, can you put up that one map that kind of shows everybody where, I'm very familiar with the National Land Trust and Spring Co-Ed and so forth. So if you're all that up there in green is Spring Co-Ed, where the National Land Trust has bought all their open space in Westminster and so forth. And down at the bottom there, when you see the Bennett property, right next to Bennett, where development in Westminster has happened, is the Ewing Tract, which has public water and sewer, has drip fields. So when we look for opportunities, whether it's a by right single-family subdivision or the potential for an active adult community, you follow where it might be somewhat accepted. And right now, it's not being accepted, but I understand that completely. But as you can see up there in the green, we know what happened up there with Mr. Dietrich and Green Co-Ed. So down there, where there already has been density and development in West Vincent, we looked at the property right next door that has access to sewer with the municipal agreement with Upper Newton right next door. And we looked for opportunity there, and whether it's a 52 lot subdivision from by right, or whether it's the active adult plan. So as you do what you do, we do what we do in terms of potential opportunities. And that's why we're here to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
that answers the question. It just still doesn't really indicate that you're aligned to the culture. It sounds as though you're most interested in opportunity and creating a more dense environment, an already dense area.
Not opportunity, but Tom Bennett being a property owner, he has
opportunity.
Exactly. So with that being said, I mean, we're looking at the best opportunity that can happen for the township, Tom Bennett, and for the McKeever. I'm not going to sit up here and give you BS. I'm not.
So,
appreciate that.
I'm not.
Thank you. I had said you were going to be the last. You may sit down, but you've got two people behind you. And so can we have Rick be the last?
It's till 9, right? Does it have to be done by 9?
Well, except that we don't have to stretch this out until 1. We do have some, some opportunities.
I was like waiting. The other people might.
Okay, I want you to come up because Rick is the last and Rick is going to be the last.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we had to be in line.
Okay, here's the thing. A while ago, I said, is there anybody, and then suddenly somebody decided, and so now that I want to cut it off so we can all go over this, and now y'all want to get over this. Don, keep coming, Mark. I'm not sure. Excuse me. The other Mark. All right, if it's please bring it to us. Thanks, Lincoln. Rick Beckridge. Correct, I'm sorry.
Hi, I'm Jessica Meager. I live at 106 Township Circle. My family of 6. I wondered if there has been any discussions with any of the land conservation agencies in the township, in the area, since if you would know us, and if you do know about Franco Ed, that's obviously very important to our township.
No, there is not.
And one more question, if that's okay. When you were speaking, you said something about that in the plan that had single-family homes, that would be very desirable to the public or well received by the public. What public did you?
No, I said that would be well received to the buyer out there today. That market has drastically changed the last 2.5 years.
Okay, so
The single family, 2-acre lot, big house, a lot of open space, game rooms, workout rooms. That's 3 years ago, I would say you're right on, but that world has changed.
I thought you said it would be desirable to the public. I'm the public.
No, I meant the public to buy, potential buyer.
Thank you, Jessica.
Amazing, got my name.
How many meetings have you been to in the last couple of months? Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Rick Merrick. I live at 2584 Chester Springs Road. Sir, do you know where that is? I'll show you where
I
it is.
don't exactly.
Can you see this?
I got that, yes, sir.
I live right there. You guys see that?
I got that.
Where's the open space behind my house? I live right there. Show me where the open space is.
The open space regarding your property?
Right, I live right there. There is none.
There is none. Correct.
Okay. So I wanted to know, will there be?
There could be, yes.
Thank you.
My name is Cindy Rhoda, and I live in Fire Station 4121 Crescent, and I was not planning on talking, and I appreciate everyone bringing facts and the research that they brought. I don't have that, so that's why I rely on Matt and Steph and so forth. But I did want to say that my husband and I moved to this community 12 years ago, and I'm a Chester County girl, and I really love the country roads. I love this community and the people here because of how we stick together, how we look out for each other. I love the beautiful landscapes. I love the country. Yes, I live in a development, but I feel like that got out of control too. It was more than I thought it was going to be. But I really am here because I walk up and down Chester Springs Road. I do my power walks and my runs probably 4 times a week, 5 times a week. I pass Steph and Matt's property on those walks, and I love it. And I was really sad yesterday when I was taking that walk. I usually am pretty happy. I sing to myself, I'm bopping around, and just thanking God for what I see every day in Chester Springs. And I got really sad because I'm thinking about how it could possibly change and how we're going to turn into a Westchester or some of the Delco places that you mentioned. I love Chester Springs because it is what it is today, and actually maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago. I think it's getting way overdeveloped. I hate 100 where we have all of those townhomes in the middle and you can't see across anymore. I am here because I don't have a speech. I'm just saying from my heart, I love Chester Springs and I keep it the way that it is. I know this is an opportunity for you. You'll bing, bang, boom, put it up and you'll be out and you'll have the money in your pocket. We don't want that. We don't want modifications. We don't want, a walking trail. My walking trail is Chester Springs Road. I don't want this in Chester Springs. I'm sorry, I'm nothing personal. I know you're doing your job, but, no more development. No more development. We want to keep the way it is. Thank you.
So I just have to respond.
Okay.
Just take 5 seconds. Now you hit me in the home. I'm from Delco. All right, so I just want to make it clear.
Okay, Cindy, we did say we'd cut it off after Cindy, right?
I have a question, a different topic. Yes. So I just have a follow-up question on historic resources. There's I guess, a question raised in whether or not there is a historic resource in the parcel?
No.
Okay, so
No,
the
we
1812.
know there's a story.
Okay, so the 1812 building, the proposal that's being submitted as of right would require demolishing that 1812 farmstead.
As of now, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No, don't worry.
There's two plans that we presented here. The one plan that you can see, and then there's the by right plan, which also was on the slide presentation that was done the last time we were here.
Okay, thank you. John has a slight closing statement, but I would like to say something. I know you all love Chester Springs, but I really wish you loved West Vincent. Because the other side of Black Horse Hill, where Toll Brothers is putting in another development, and where McKee is putting in Cedar Glenmore or Chester Springs over there. The village of Eagle is in the Chester Springs zip code, all the way down to the turnpike across from, what's that called? The place where you could go get hunting gear and one tractor supply. Thank you very much. So think about your comments in terms of the culture of West Vincent. We treasure it, we try hard to protect it, and so, you know, I love that you want to protect Chester Springs Road, but when it comes to preserving West Vincent, that road's in West Vincent. So think about the bigger or the narrower or the closer to home branding of West Vincent. We don't want to be Upper Euclid, whether it's Chester Springs or not. John Granger is our township manager. Thank you.
Couple comments from the administration. The proposed by right plan does not meet the tier 3 criteria. Subdivision land development ordinance requires a 5-step design process where protected resources, features, and greenery land is determined first. It is a very complex process that takes probably a year to go through before any development homes are considered. I think there's a lot of not misunderstanding, but there's something here that the board, retains that a lot of people don't know. There's one issue that I want to bring to everybody's attention. It's critically important, not only to this development, but to the township. Back about 10 or 15 years ago, the township joined the Phoenixville Regional Home. I lived in Phoenixville Regional Plan. That is probably the best strategic decision the township ever made. From a planning perspective, it allows the township to count the things that are in Phoenixville as things as if they were involved in West Vincent. For land uses. So the state requires you have a comprehensive plan, and everything that's in every use has to be in the comprehensive plan. So if a wider area, those uses can be someplace else. The age-restricted plan requires a zoning amendment. The Board of Supervisors retains sole authority whether or not to even entertain a zoning amendment request. If the administration's recommendation is if a formal request to rezone the property for high-density development is made, it is recommended that the amendment not be entertained by the board. The township is interested in a conservation solution to the problem to development of the site, and that its planning process be adhered to strictly. I think that's an important point to make. There's a lot of comments about if the zoning request is made, does the board have to hear it? No, they do not. And the administration is recommending that they do not. That's it.
on Wednesday, and the Environmental Advisory Council on Thursday. It's a busy week. Y'all come back anytime. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I don't think so.